Hello, welcome back to another episode of Three Los International, your number one English source for all things Olympiacos. We're back. It's day 7 of these daily transfer updates. My name's Costa. I'm joined by Martial from France. Martial, how are you doing?
I'm getting tired over not sleeping, waiting for transfers for Olympiacos, checking the phone every night. No, joke aside, I'm very good. I'm confident, and I just want to see what will come through the next days.
Well, indeed, things are heating up. It's transfer deadline day in the UK tomorrow, actually, 11 p.m. UK time. For Olympiacos, the key date is really the 4th of September. Just to clarify, 4th of September is when we have to submit our squad list to UEFA. The transfer rumour mill is really heating up at this moment in time. We've got lots to talk about, including Wilfried Zaha, among other. But before we do that, don't forget, like and subscribe, help us to keep growing the international red and white community. Hit the bell for notifications and make sure you keep getting the latest updates. We'll be doing these transfer updates daily until that key date on the 4th of September. Also, you can go and check out our Patreon for more exclusive content. Everything you need is in the description below, so check that out. You can go on our Patreon site for more content, including access to our WhatsApp group, interviews outside the realm of Olympiacos, and exclusive merchandise tier as well. So go and check that out. Before we get to the main course, there were a couple of quick rumors, transfer news that came out in the press today. One was about Christian Kwame. You might remember him from the Conference League final. He came on as a sub, if I remember well, for Fiorentina. Relatively young, forceful winger. Nicolo Shearer, I believe, broke that news today that he's signing a new contract with Fiorentina and that Fiorentina rejected advances of Olympiacos for the player. So it's clear to see that Olympiacos is making moves in the market, looking for alternatives to Daniel Podence. If the Daniel Podence deal doesn't go through, as we've said before, Wolves are insisting on a 10 million euro transfer fee, and it's been reported as well that Daniel Podence is asking for wages, annual salary of around 3 million euros. As we've said before, we believe that one's going to go down to the wire, but in the meantime, Olympiacos is looking at other options as well. Another name that's been going around, not for the first time, is the name of Willian. Brazilian international, has made close to 90 appearances for the Brazilian national team. Most of you will remember him from his time at Chelsea and the last couple of seasons at Fulham, where he's done really well. He's 36 years of age. He's played 67 games for Fulham, scored 10 goals and grabbed 7 assists. I think obviously Olympiacos fans don't want to hear the name of Willian as a potential replacement for Podence, but I think this one's worth kind of exploring a little bit. Martial, what do you think of this potential move?
Yeah, I agree with you because a part of the skills Willian has is a tremendous professional athlete for me, and it might not matter to people at first when you analyze a player. Like you don't really care about how serious it is of the field. But if talking about Podence, but one of Podence's main quality for me is being very serious outside the pitch. Like how many stories he put on Instagram, like follow my jet and stuff like that. And it's something that also needs to be replaced if we sign a player that is not Podence. And when you look at Willian's number, you have his goals, his assists, but you have mainly a guy that I think he has played over 700 games in his career. So he basically missed very few games. And that's why we need ready players. We need players that are able to make like 30 games per season, if not more, because that's what matters at the end of it, the competitivity of a player. And a part of that, Willian has the whole package for me. He's experienced. He played in Europe. He also played in leagues like in Ukraine, for example, a club like Shakhtar. I'm not comparing Olympiacos to that, but I think it's what comes closer in his resume to Olympiacos reality, like being the biggest fish of the country, playing in Europe, trying to be good in Europe, trying to defy the odds in Europe against bigger team. And I think it's valuable overall. compared to someone like Zaha, for example. We'll talk about it later, but that's the main difference I see, because Zaha struggled in Turkey. Meanwhile, Willian was able to be good in Ukraine for years, so it might count at the end of it.
Yeah, as you said, I think it's a player that's really a model professional that's taken care of his body. One of those Brazilian players that doesn't exactly fit the beautiful game, jogo bonito stereotype. Is really maybe a European Brazilian player, physical. He can dribble the ball, and just he's been very consistent in all his career, as you said. But also, I think our average age in the squad has come down significantly. And so I feel like we are lacking some of those more veteran type experienced players in the squad. And I think that he could play that role really well. It has been said that, Willian isn't a name that we're hearing for the first time. He's actually been linked to us, I think, pretty much the last 2 summers as well. He was a free agent after he moved from Arsenal back to Corinthians, I think it was. And there were some rumours about him 2 summers ago. He ended up at Fulham. Then he was released again, and Nottingham Forest were interested last summer, and he was between Forest and Fulham. So, the executives of Olympiacos are familiar with Willian as well. Olympiacos has a good relationship with Willian's agent. So I wouldn't be surprised. I think it's one of those potential deals that could happen closer to deadline day, depending on what else has happened. But looking at it from the perspective of a Jovetic replacement, I would be quite positive about it. Having that kind of player that you can bring off the bench, who's really, he's able. I think he's still able to run at people and use his technique, fire a shot from outside the box, and give something to the club, whether it's holding the ball out on the wing like Jovetic used to do, bringing others into play. So I think I'd be quite positive about it in that respect.
You compare him to Jovetic, but maybe I would compare him to Tyson, probably. Look what Tyson is for PAOK, for example. Like, it's almost, they look like brothers because they played in the same clubs, same leagues, and they still have the magic. Doesn't matter if they can run 12 kilometers per game. Like, of course they can, but they are not called to do that. They are called to have the key pass when it matters, the goal when it matters, and to be like a leader. And Tyson became that at PAOK. What's the key part of the title?
Willian is younger too. Well, I think by a year maybe, because a lot of people focus on age. He's actually younger than Tyson, and you say, I think he can be a really positive influence on the growth potential of some of our younger players as well. So okay, let's keep an eye out on that one. Like we said, Willian's available on a free transfer. There's been a lot of talk about Miltiadis, Marinakis, Rodinei, and some others following him on his socials, but that's really not anything unusual given the context and the background that I explained before. But let's get to the main menu, as it were. Wilfried Zaha is really the name that's doing the rounds today in the Greek media, and it's kind of blowing up everywhere. What do we know about this situation with Wilfried Zaha? We all remember Wilfried Zaha from his time at Crystal Palace. When he was younger, he made a big move to Manchester United, was loaned back to Palace, went back to United, then went to Cardiff for 6 months, back to Palace. So, we know him for his exploits at Palace. He then went to Galatasaray on a free transfer. He played 42 games last season, about half of those as a starter, got 10 goals, 5 assists, 1 goal against Manchester United in the group stages of the Champions League. He started off his career at Galatasaray pretty positively, but then it all started to crumble. Lots of big personalities, big names at Galatasaray, and at least from some discussions that I had with Galatasaray fans, they had the impression that he wanted to be the star, or that he was expecting to be the star at Galatasaray. He was surrounded by players like Mauro Icardi, Hakim Ziyech. Just overall wasn't a good fit for him in the end. And there is some context also to what's going on at Galatasaray right now. So they've had a horrible start to the season. They lost 5-0 to Besiktas. It's one of their fierce rivals in Istanbul. 5-0 in the Super Cup, followed by getting knocked out by Switzerland's young boys. That's from the Champions League playoffs. So you've got fans boycotting and wanting the management out. So it's a rather chaotic situation at Galatasaray. He is earning 8 million euros, just to be clear. Half is from the club, so 4 million, around 4 million euro contract with Galatasaray, and 4 million from sponsors in Turkey. There were reports today that he is, his agent was traveling to Istanbul today to negotiate his release from Galatasaray on a free transfer. Remember, he signed with Galatasaray on a free transfer. So that's where we are. We heard some news just before we started recording that the negotiations, according to one reporter in Turkey, that the negotiations today haven't ended in a deal. Apparently, Zaha is asking for 10 million euros to, as his compensation to get released. The last thing I'll say, Marshall, before I ask you for your opinion on this, is that there were talks between Galatasaray and Leicester City and Crystal Palace some weeks back about a loan deal to go back and play in the Premier League, but those fell through because Zaha would have to pay tax twice in Turkey and in the UK. So that loan deal to Leicester, which was more advanced, fell through. So let's see how this advances. But this is the fresh news, the fresh name on the agenda. What do you think of this, Marshall? Is it Podence replacement? Is it wrong to look at it like that? What do you think?
It's always difficult to analyze when we have a target in Turkish football, because the situation in Turkish football is at the same time close to the Greek one and very far away from the Greek reality, because they have more money, but they have more impatience than in Greece. And it reminds me when we took Valbuena in Fenerbahce, because what you said about someone wanting to be the big fish, it's impossible for Zaha, for example, to be the big fish in Galatasaray, because they have Icardi, they have Torreira, they have like bunch of big names, Ziyech to mention that. And it's difficult for those players to find a place, because we all know how they work. And I think for Olympiacos, there is a lot of good moves to make in Turkey, including in Turkish big clubs, if we put aside the fact that we basically have to empty their trashes. And no, but it is what it is, because Zaha probably is not counted. He has a very high wage, as you said. And I think the loan solution would please all parts, because we can't pay the fee, we can't pay all the wage, and they need to get rid of part of the wage. And the way they work on the market, it's crazy, and there is a ton of good moves to do with Turkish clubs. And in terms of quality-wise, Zaha is a very high profile for Olympiacos. Yes, it's a risky move because it does not look like the most professional players. Coming back to what we said before about Willian, it might sound like the typical tourist when someone comes to Greece, but a part of that, the quality he has, it's tremendous. I think it's above Podence. That's my personal opinion, because what he did for Crystal Palace over the years was massive. We're not talking about Onyekuru. We're not talking about someone like Bolasie, for example. The magician that have a trick once every 4 games and disappear. If there is a way to get Zaha, it would be good, and I trust Mendilibar to make him good for the team. The big question is the finance, of course, but apart of that, I have no doubt.
I have big question marks about how he would fit in the team. Okay, like you said, he obviously has quality. If you've seen him play at Palace, he absolutely, in a way, he carried them for long periods of time. We all know he's fast. He's got good technique on the ball. I don't think he brings what Podence brought sometimes in terms of vision or being able to dribble his way out of trouble. Is less fancy, but it's a difficult one on the finances, because you just don't know how this is going to work out. What we know from the previous loan discussions with Leicester and Palace is that Galatasaray was actually willing to pay the wages of Zaha, as long as Leicester or Palace would pay a big loan fee. So if it is a loan, it would come presumably with a large fee for the season, plus an option, because this guy's got 2 years left on his contract over there. But again, no disrespect to the player, but I do get a little bit of a tourist vibe from him. I don't think it's what he had imagined for himself in his career. At 31 to come to Greece, I think he's still got a couple of years of good football in him. On the other hand, he'd be moving from a club that has deep issues in terms of how it's run, the squad, and he'd be coming into a team that has a set style of play with a manager that knows what he wants. And of course, I think we all believe that any player that is to come in is going to be approved by the manager. So I feel like anyone that comes in, Mendilibar is going to have a way of bedding him into the side and using him properly. That's all I can say right now.
The thing is, I've watched the qualifiers game from Turkish clubs, and we might not have the same amount of big names into the squad, but we are so ahead of them when it comes to the team, the locker room, the logic, with Mendilibar especially. And I think it's something that we have to have in mind. If we go to take a player in Turkey right now, I'm pretty sure it will be good, because it's the same for Gelson Martins, for example. Gelson Martins is close to Zaha in terms of profile, but for a different reason, because he was always injured. Like, he's not reliable for me because he was always injured. But if you put that in a good context, if you don't put a bigger a pressure that is too big on him, maybe I'm not expecting Zaha to deliver a double-double if he signs for Olympiacos, but if he can be useful, that will be good. The difference with Galatasaray is that when they sign those players, they expect Galatasaray to basically go through the Champions League group stage. The expectation are different. And just look at Galatasaray over the years. Can you name me the last good coach they had? They have no coach. Fenerbahce, they had a random Turkish coach last season.
Not really.
He was decent, but they appointed Jose Mourinho over him. And Mourinho is lost for football. He played against Lille, was tragic. It has the Turkish football has no tactical basis at all, especially in the big clubs. They're just adding players next to each players. Olympiacos right now is very different. Yeah. That's why I'm confident if Zaha signs. Doesn't mean he will be a top signing, but
looking at Turkish teams, sometimes it feels like they have the transfer policies that we used to have 3 or 4 years ago, or even going back. Just signing big name players and trying to find success by signing big players with profiles, but it doesn't always work that way. We have a much nicer balance to our squad. It certainly did, at the end of last year, and I think that's what contributed greatly to winning the Conference League. But okay, we'll keep an eye on that. I did say a couple of episodes ago when I was alone, I think that I was expecting new names to come out, and I think a lot of the names that are coming out are smokescreen, and that in the end, we're likely to have names just pop up last minute of announcements, barring Willian, probably. I think Willian is one that will come up again towards the end of the window for us. But we obviously keep an eye on this, and don't forget, guys, tomorrow I said is the transfer deadline day in the UK, 11 p.m. So, ideally, if we're going to find a deal for Daniel Podence, Marshall, surely it has to be sometime. It has to be tomorrow, doesn't it? I mean, if Wolves are going to sell him, they need to find a replacement.
I told that to Ari yesterday. Like, I'm so lost in this case because I don't even have basis in which I can rely on. I mean, I don't know if Podence is just waiting for the clubs to get along with a fee. I don't know. Maybe it's the club trying to have an agreement with Podence over his wages. Maybe it's Wolverhampton having other targets in mind that they want to close before giving the green light for. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know where to position myself. I'm sure the club would try until the last minute to get him back, even if it takes another loan for him to come back with a mandatory purchase option. I don't know. I would be happy. Even if it's a loan, I don't care, honestly. I'm just thinking season after season. I'm not projecting myself further than the next summer. So if if it has to be a loan, if it has to be through Nottingham, I don't know. If it has to be through Rio Ave paying a fee, I don't know. I'm okay for everything.
Let's move on. I'm sure that's something we're going to come back to probably even tomorrow or in the coming days. The next name that we want to have a look at, another one that came up today is Azedine Ounahi. And really, Marshall, I don't know much, if anything, about this player, but he's a current player of Marseille, your club in France. So what can you tell us about Ounahi, his situation? Is it feasible from a market perspective? What's his status in Marseille? What do you think of the player? Tell us.
Well, the first thing is that the French market is currently affected by the TV rights situation, which is almost catastrophic. A lot of clubs needs to sell players, and they want a fee for that. It includes Ounahi, but I think it's the most we are going toward the deadline day. The more reluctant they will be to accept a loan with a purchase option, for example. Having said that, Ounahi is not counted yet by the Zerbi. It belongs to a group of players in which you have Veretout and Bemba that are trying to find a solution to leave the club. The club are asking them to leave the club. Ounahi was linked with a move to Qatar, but he refused to go. The club was willing to pay, but he refused to sign there. So I don't know exactly how it's feasible for Olympiacos to get Ounahi. I don't think it's possible on a permanent basis, for sure, because he costs like around 8 to 10 million, probably, because he's still young. He plays for the Moroccan national team. The hype around Ounahi comes from the World Cup in Qatar, in which he was very good with Morocco, that reached the semifinals. And Luis Enrique he came on a presser and said, like, who's the number 8? I didn't
Right,
know
that's
this
the
guy.
one.
Yeah, he told, I don't know this guy. Who is that? Who is that guy? He was impressive. And it was true because he was really impressive. And even in Marseille, he had like few games in which he was very impressive, technically very gifted, good passes, nice shooting ability from outside the box. But the issue with him is consistency, like being able to be good game after game after game after game. He also struggled with an injury that was quite strange. Like he broke his toe in a friendly game with Morocco, and he basically missed half of the season due to that. It took so many times to recover, and I think he needs to find consistency outside of the French league. Probably it would come close to a move like Miralas back in the time. You know, those players that have qualities, they can't express it in France because it's tougher, more expectations. But maybe coming to Greece with the quality he has could be good for him and for Olympiacos, of course, because you don't find that quality very often in the market. It's just about the ability of Mendilibar and the club to make it click in Olympiacos if we get him, and it can bring that creativity we are lacking. He's no Horta, he's not Fortunis. He won't have 10 goals, 10 assists, but he has good qualities. It's worth a try for me. If we can get him, it's worth a try, definitely.
And we have a good record with Moroccan players in general.
Yeah, exactly.
It seems. Okay, so but you're saying this it's not an Horta replacement or a Fortunis replacement.
The thing is, the profile of Ounahi is very. I don't exactly know how to describe it. The only way I would describe it is like it is super thin. Like people probably would get scared about him being able to win duels because he has no muscle at all. Like you look at his calves, it's super thin. But I don't want to be into stereotypes, but Moroccan players like him, like he looks like a 5-kilometer runner you see at the Olympics, like quite tall, thin, and he can run all game long. He can run all game long.
Who
He
would
has
you like? Who would you compare him to? Like well-known players? Is he like a metronome midfield player? Like likes to keep the ball moving, or like what? How would you?
yeah. It's difficult because he didn't have a complete season with Marseille, and I was always wondering, is this guy a number 6? Is this guy a number 8?
Hmm.
It was frustrating, but maybe pairing with someone like Endoy in the midfield would be nice. Like to have someone more aggressive next to him than to carry the ball, because he loves to have good passes. He has that touching ability with the ball that would be nice for Olympiacos, especially in a dominating team in the league. The question mark, of course, will be the consistency.
Okay.
Otherwise, he wouldn't be linked with Olympiacos for sure.
Okay. So he's one player that's been touted for Olympiacos from France. There was another one via Nikos Kotsis yesterday night. So it was Ounahi and Yazici,
Yeah.
for a Turkish international from. I mean, he spent his time at Lille last season. He did pretty well. Good numbers from what I saw. Lille got knocked out of the Conference League by Aston Villa in the quarterfinals on penalties. For those that remember, what do you think of him, Marshall? He's on a free transfer. He's available. He's on the market. Why hasn't anybody picked him up? He's 27 years of age. What's going on with him?
The thing is that, as I said before, the market is quite strange because when you're 27, like Yazici, it's difficult for you to find a club that will bet on you, even if you're free, because you're losing the resale value. Like a lot of clubs are thinking like that. Okay, it's 27. I'm not going to buy this guy, even if it's free, because if he stays for 2 years, like no one will buy him apart from Saudi club probably, or in Qatar, I don't know. But apart of that, I don't really understand why he's still free, because he has a lot of quality. He's coming off a very solid season with Lille. He tore his ACL, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, when like the season after signing for Lille, he tore his ACL and he lost time due to that. That's why he was loaned to Turkey and Russia, because he lost his spot in Lille. But apart of that, I think he's peaking. He's 27. He's probably reaching his best level, and it's a player for me that is made to play in a side that plays European football. Either it's, I don't know, a Spanish club that plays Europa League, Italian club like Fiorentina. I don't know. He needs to have that high level football to play, because he has a lot to offer. He has experience both in Europe with the club and with the national team. He's a good free kick taker too, from what I remember. He's an elegant player. Is an elegant player, and not only because he has long hairs, but because he has a nice. He has nice feet, if I can say that. And I remember saying that at the beginning of the month of August, that out of the free agent profiles, compared to what we currently need, he is probably the best option, because he has probably the best package. If we want someone that will be ready quickly, that can score goals, that can have assists, that's probably the best replacement we can find for Podence, if we are reluctant to pay a fee.
Is he left-footed? Does he like to cut in from the right?
I think so. Not as much as Zegrova, for example, but yeah, he has a good shooting ability too. I think he doesn't have. I would say he's complete as a player. Like someone like Ounahi, for example, is probably lacking some strength or maybe power, if I can say that. But someone like Yazici, for me, is more complete. It would fit quite nice in what Mendilibar wants, because he's not known to be lazy. For example, I mentioned Zegrova before. The struggle with Zegrova is that he's kind of a Arjen Robben from Wish, like, very technically gifted player that loves to come back inside to shoot from the left foot, but he struggles sometimes to defend, to have a tactical good basis for a team, which isn't the case for Yazici. He's more mature. That's the word I was looking for. He's mature.
Where would you play him in this team?
At the same position, Chiquinho played against Carretera, for example. Almost a number 10, second striker. I don't know.
Okay. Interesting. Well, I think that's all we have in terms of potential incomings. There are some news relating to outgoings or sales or income, and the first one is related to Svetozar Markovic. Some of you might remember. We signed him as a relatively young prospect from Partizan. Never really got a chance with Olympiacos. Pedro Martins didn't fancy him. He went back to Partizan. Partizan have sold him to Victoria Plitzen, a team we faced in Champions League qualifiers the 2020 season. We held 50% of his rights when we gave him back to Partizan, and I can't remember the fee. How much are they selling him for, Marshall?
1.5 million.
Okay, so we get 750k.
That's nice.
From the sale. So we get some money from the sale of Markovic to Plitzen. The other, okay, we have to deal with this one, unfortunately. There's been, I can only call it a shitstorm around Santiago Heze, and it was created by a tweet that was showing the flight plans of a plane that took Stefan Bajetic, or is taking Stefan Bajetic to Austria tomorrow. It was the same plane that took Chiesa to Liverpool, and apparently the flight plan was showing that it's going to Athens tomorrow after Austria. And someone tweeted underneath Heze Olympiacos, and then it went viral. Like one Olympiacos account wrote that Liverpool's interested in Heze, and it's everywhere. It's everywhere, guys. We reached out to some journalists in the UK. They had heard nothing about this. Really, we think that this is baseless. There's no credible reporting around this in the UK. In fact, I'm checking now to see if we heard back. No, really, the Liverpool journalists that we talked to were all in shock. If we do hear something, we will put it to bed, quoting one of these Liverpool journalists. But we wanted to address that one quickly because yes, it's our most sellable asset. There was reported interest from Newcastle, a club that has links with us via deals made by Nottingham Forest, the Chris Wood deal, and Vlacho Dimos going to Newcastle, Anderson going to Nottingham Forest this season. So that one was a bit more believable. This one's really come out of nowhere. Martial.
Honestly, I don't know what to say. It's both the magic and the sadness that comes from the summer market, because we have way more tools nowadays to create rumors like that. Because like 10 years ago, I was basically watching news, with the text on your TV. I don't know if you had that in the UK, or in the newspapers, of course, like the written newspapers. But nowadays, man, you have like flight radars, you have insiders, Instagrams account that players follow and stuff, and it's easy to create rumors. I don't doubt the fact that Heze is probably on the list of a lot of clubs abroad, that's for sure. But the plane situation reminds me of the Shaqiri situation when he landed in Greece to go back to Switzerland of the USA. People say, "Oh, he's going to sign for a Greek club." No, it was just landing, changing planes, and go back to Switzerland. Because I'm not an expert with planes, but sometimes the destination probably is due to the fees, the fuel you have to put in the plane doesn't cost the same price in some countries. It could be stuff like that.
I think let's put that one to bed. Like we'll come back and hopefully get a a response from a credible journalist on that one, and we really put that one to bed. But I think that's all we've got time for, unless I missed something, Marshall. We've covered everything for today, right?
Yeah, the reality of today is not the one of tomorrow, unfortunately or fortunately. Let's see what's the future all for us.
Exactly. Let's see what we're talking about tomorrow. We're going to wrap it up here. Don't forget, guys, to like and subscribe. It really helps with the algorithm and finding more red and white fans around the world in Greece. Not just only in Greece, but bringing together fans from other places. Subscribe, keep up to date with everything that is Thrillos International and Olympiacos. As I said, we continue with these daily updates up until the 4th of September. And don't forget, tomorrow, 30th of August, is the draw for the Europa League. So tomorrow we'll find out who our opponents are going to be. We're going to be playing European football until the end of January, guaranteed at the least. So we'll have more to talk about tomorrow. Like and subscribe. Show your appreciation for the channel. Check out our Patreon as well. If you fancy leaving us a donation, you can do that via the super chat too. Until tomorrow, guys, my name's Costa with my friend Marshall. We'll be back tomorrow. Thrillos International, by the fans, for the fans. See you next time.